plenty of CBCs, whether knowingly or unknowingly, but the problem is we won't properly, we give the cursory appraisal for that. We don't interpret properly, but which has a lot of nuances and a lot of diagnosis is contained with the strip. So that is the thing. Finally, today's we are going to discuss in the next 1 hour how to go about how to interpret the Coulter reports effectively. And to start with, I dedicate this lecture to Professor Pushpa, who is a mother of hematology from ICH Chennai, who about 25 years back inspired me when she came for one of the conferences in Pondicherry, the first conference we conducted in Pondicherry, like East Coast Pedicon, who with a simple peripheral smear and CBC, she actually came to a different diagnosis, which inspired me to take on the field of hematology, to take a special interest in hematology, and to particularly with respect to general pediatrics, how it will be helpful. I dedicate this lecture to Professor Pushpa, who is no more, and definitely she is the inspiration for many of the current day hematologists in Tamil Nadu. Dr. Ravadi Raj is a beloved student of Pushpa, and we myself and everybody, and Dr. Sarla Rajaji and everyone. The scope of the presentation is when to do the CBC, and mainly the timing is very important, when and particularly whom to do, because we are used to do for each and every patient, whether it is fruitful or not. But when a patient comes with the pallor or bleeding, no doubt CBC is the first investigation to be done, no doubt. But when it comes to fever or cough or any other thing in general pediatrics, we should know the timing of interpretation, the timing of doing the CBC matters. For example, day 1 of fever, if you do, it may be a stress response. Falsely, you may be having neutrophilia. So when to do is very, very important. So timing of doing the investigation plays a major role with respect to CBC. Then coming to the second point, how to do. When it comes to any laboratory methods, there are 3 parts, whether pre-analytical, analytical, and post-analytical. When it comes to pre-analytical, how you take the sample, how the sample is taken, how the sample is carried away, how it is stored in the container before doing the test. All these things are very important. For example, we mainly have the EDTA containers to take the blood, to actually store it before to going to the machine. And the problem is the taking blood in the pediatrics is very difficult. Sometimes what happens when you take it for a long time, there will be simple blood clots which can affect the platelet value, everything. So in the same way, EDTA sample can sometimes will be affecting the platelet count, which I will say later. So that pre-analytically, how you are taking the sample is very important. Next, coming to the counter, and we have now flooded with CBC counters in every part of the country, because now for the past 20 years, it has become a routine in every days. Every small hospital have a counter for the past 10 years. And these counters, we should know the counters first, whether it's a really a reliable counter or an unreliable cheap China make machine, because the technology and the quality control of the counter plays a very important role before interpreting the reports. For example, and these are the doyens who invented the Coulter principle in the Chicago basement membrane around the 1952, which was finally actually implemented in Boston Children's Hospital 1958. This was the first Coulter counter implemented in Children's Hospital Boston 19. These are the doyens, Joe Coulter and Wallace Coulter. My salutes to him. Because of them, we are now reaping the fruits of them. These are the standard Coulter counters available in the market. Beckman Coulter goes by the name Coulter. Next comes the Siemens, they have the Advia. Next comes the Abbott, it's Sapphire, and Sysmex. These are all the 4 to 5 standard companies which are easily available in India. Also in every corner it is available. And these are the standard machines, and which they use the different principles. The previously in 1952, it was the electrical impedance principle invented by Beckman Coulter. In 1970, the optical principle was evaluated. This thing. In the 90s, the immunological methods like monoclonal antibody methods came. And finally, the combination of methods are used in the current day Coulters. And we have plenty of Coulters, 3-part, 5-part, 6-part, 7-part. For a routine general pediatrician, for his workflow, 3-part differential counter is more than enough for everyday practice. This is my humble opinion. 3-part counter is more than enough. See to that you have the standard Coulter machine, number one. And second thing, the quality check, you should know at least weekly once you should do the quality check, whether it is the machine gives the correct report or erroneous report. For example, I usually go for the peripheral smear. I compare with the peripheral smear whether my Coulter is giving a proper report or not. In that way, I see to that my machine is giving the proper report. Okay, this is the machine I am using in my hospital for the past nearly 11 to 12 years. This is the Sysmex KX21, which is one of the internationally reputed machines. In plenty of the studies, this Sysmex KX21 comes, which is a 3-part differential. And this is the microscope which I use for mainly the peripheral smear study. Usually they go hand in hand when you are using in day-to-day practice. Okay, so apart from the technical part, so far we have gone. So pre-analytical and analytical, coming to the post-analytical. So thinking that having that the pre-analytical part, you have taken the sample properly. Having the machine is the good quality control machine is there in your center or in the nearby lab. You should try to visit the lab and see to that what machine they are using and how they are using. We should see that. And having this, everything is proper. Now we will come to the topic proper. So now onwards, the topic starts. How we are going to interpret the CBC report. The CBC report is not reporting or interpreting is not it's a rocket science. Just the CBC contains just 3 components or 3 elements. They are RBCs, WBCs, and platelets. We have to interpret each and every one what they are, what problems or what abnormality they contain. For example, mainly in the case of fever without focus, that CBC is done day in, day out. So the WBC is the TCDC is the priority for most of us. But still we have to look out other things also. When it comes to a TCDC, you have to look about mainly the RBC and platelets also. So when it comes to total count, what is the normal total count? We should know 5,000 to 15,000. This is the 2 standard deviation below and above the mean for age. In the adult, it comes roughly around 4,000 to 11,000. So this is the difference between the adults and pediatric. We should be aware of it. Children are growing, and so the values will be vary from the newborn to the adolescent age. We should be aware of it. The very varying values of the HB and everything, lymphocytes and everything, we should be aware of it, which I am not going in detail now. When it comes to leukocytosis, when do you say leukocytosis? Whenever the count is more than 15,000, you say as a leukocytosis. When do you say neutrophilic leukocytosis? Whenever the count is more than 15,000 and the neutrophil percentage is more than 65 to 70%, that is ANC is more than 10,000, we say that we are dealing with a case of mostly a neutrophilic leukocytosis. When do you say lymphocytic leukocytosis? When the total count is more than 15,000 or 13,000 and the absolute lymphocyte count is more than 8,000 or 4,000 in adolescent, we say the child is having lymphocytic leukocytosis. Next comes to the low counts. When do we say a leukopenia? Whenever the count is less than 4,000, we say as a leukopenia. It can be a neutropenic leukopenia or a lymphopenic leukopenia, because the neutropenia may be the basic reason for the leukopenia, or lymphopenia may be the reason for the leukopenia. So we should be aware. So what is normal, what is cytosis, what is cytopenia. Then always do not forget to watch what happens in the other cell lines. So for all practical purposes, I have given anemia is less than 10 grams is anemia unless proved otherwise, and thrombocytopenia for as a hematological purpose sake, anything less than 1 lakh is of significance. For example, we know 1.5 lakhs is the cutoff, but still anything less than 1 lakh is significant thrombocytopenia. So these are the values we should be aware before going to the interpretation proper. Okay, let us go through the different sets of case scenarios. Through the 15 case scenarios I have taken, which day in day out we are seeing. So it is going to be a little interactive session. Anybody please kindly unmute. You can try to answer whenever I ask question. Then only it will be interesting for the further proceedings. This is a CBC from the Sysmex KX21. Can anybody enumerate what is the abnormality here? Here the WBC count is 7,500. We know As I've already told, 5,000 to 15,000 is normal for all practical purposes. So WBC is normal. HB is 13.2. So definitely more than 10 grams, this is normal. Platelet is 2.7 lakhs. So this is also normal. So whenever the WBC is normal, so for all practical purposes, this column, no need to be seen, because this differential is no need to be seen whenever the WBC is normal. But for what happened in this patient, the patient has taken to the general practitioner, and general practitioner has taken a CBC, as I will come later, and he has underlined the neutrophil is high, neutrophilia is there, you have infection, he has told. So this is an error, common error in thing. So whenever the WBC count is normal, no point in looking at this column. So again and again I stress. So final, what is so my question is, this CBC report is normal or abnormal? So what is the thing? What is the CBC report? Anybody can answer, please. Is it a normal report or an abnormal report? It is definitely the WBC is normal, RBC is normal, platelet is normal, all the cell lines are normal. So it is a normal CBC with relative neutrophilia. It is of no significance. Okay. So the patient actually is a 3-year-old child with a fever, the fever not responding to paracetamol. Parents are anxious, get self-tested and taken to the practitioner, and he has told infection is there and you have to get admitted and for antibiotics. So but this is the common error, because this is a normal CBC. This is not a neutrophilia. This is a pseudo neutrophilia. This is not a neutrophilia. Interpretation is the CBC is not contributory in this patient. So the CBC is normal. It is a pseudo neutrophilia. So this is the first scenario. Scenario number 2. Can anybody interpret the CBC? What happens in the WBC cell line here? Here, as I've already told, it is more than 15,000. So it is 20,000. Total count is high. There is leukocytosis. There is hemoglobin is low. There is anemia. Platelet is normal. So this is a case of neutrophilic leukocytosis with anemia. So from the Coulter, we can interpret this is a case of neutrophilia with anemia. Whether it is significant or not, we should only know, we will come to know only when we have the clinical correlation. Otherwise, it is of no use. For example, in this patient, what happened? This is a 15 months baby with a high fever of 24 hours, prothrombin convulsions, and CBC was ordered, and the CBC shown this neutrophilic leukocytosis. Is it significant? Because first day CBC is it better not to do CBC, but in this case, because of the convulsions they have did, what happened? The convulsion is a stress phenomenon, and the convulsions can pump adrenaline into the circulation. Adrenaline can, what happens, can bring the neutrophil from the marginal pool into the central pool. The neutrophils can be pseudo-wise. For example, they can be actually elevated as a falsely. It is also known as stress neutrophilia. So whenever you have a stressful situation, so like a day 1 fever, or a stress like a repeated vomiting, or repeated convulsion, or acute severe asthma, or any acute severe abdominal pain, you can have such a stress phenomenon and the neutrophilia. So what happens, what normally this thing is, this is not given the diagnosis of stress neutrophilia, and this is taken as a case of infection. There is a severe neutrophilia, and immediately what happens, they think that we are dealing with a meningitis, and they go ahead with the LP, they go ahead with the IV ceftriaxone. This is the message I want to know. So day 1 fever, whenever you take, whenever stressful situation is there, think about stress neutrophilia whenever the thing. So Coulter reports is different. Our clinical interpretation should be can be different. So both you should go hand in hand when you are evaluating the case. Coming to the case scenario number 3. What is happening in this case? Again, there is neutrophilia is there. Hemoglobin is normal. Platelet is normal. So the interpretation is, the Coulter interpretation is neutrophilic leukocytosis. So what I am going to do, only with the clinical scenario, I know this neutrophilia is significant or not. So in this case, already fever was for 3 days, clinically no focus. So then I know there is inflammation is going on somewhere in the body that is producing neutrophilic leukocytosis. We should try to find out the fire. where the fire is going on in the brain or in the middle compartment in the pneumonia, in the lower compartment in the kidneys, where the fire is going on. So what to do? We know there is somewhere some fire is going on. We should try to find out the fire. That is the main thing. So there we should rule out occult serious bacterial infection like occult UTI and occult pneumonia has to be ruled out. So this indicates on day 3 of illness, always we should try to rule out occult UTI may be there. If not, occult pneumonia may be there. For example, there was a statement about 1/3 of the patients with neutrophilia can have X-ray evidence of pneumonia, even though clinically will not be having evidence. This is known as occult pneumonia. So 1/3 of the patient, you can have pneumonia on X-ray, even though clinically you don't have, whenever the total count is more than 20 to 25,000, this is known as occult pneumonia, or you can have occult UTI. So this is the clinically the solution on day 3 of illness, whenever you are dealing with the neutrophilic leukocytosis. Okay. Now coming to the case number 4. Again, total count is leukocytosis is there. So what is the thing? So here HB is normal and platelet is normal. Here also again neutrophil is there. The total count is high. So I would like to see which part is the neutrophil. So here also absolute neutrophil count is high. So telling that I am dealing with a case of neutrophilic leukocytosis. Here again there is a flag is there. What is this flag? In the mixed cell, this middle is the mixed cell. Whenever in the middle is the mixed cell, it indicates whenever you go again, you see in the smear, there are plenty of eosinophils. So whenever there is a, like this, whenever neutrophilic leukocytosis with eosinophilia is there, the interpretation is entirely different. So neutrophilic leukocytosis with eosinopenia is different, whereas neutrophilic leukocytosis with eosinophilia is different. This is a case of fever of 3 days duration with a red tongue and red lips. It is presenting like a Kawasaki, and finally turned out to be a case of scarlet fever. So we all know there was a scarlet uniform rash in this baby with everywhere like a sora and the red tongue was there and strawberry tongue was there. It is a case of scarlet fever. Here again, the clue was neutrophilic leukocytosis. ANC is more than 10,000 and neutrophilia is there. But extra finding is the mixed cell, that is mixed cell. This is the lymphocyte compartment. This is the neutrophil compartment. This is the mixed compartment where mainly which belongs to the monocyte, eosinophil and basophil. And here the eosinophils were high when we look at the smear. So finally it turned out to be a case of scarlet fever. Neutrophilic leukocytosis with eosinophilia. So always whenever there is neutrophilic leukocytosis, see what is happening in the other compartments and try to correlate, and definitely that will give a different diagnosis compared to the original diagnosis of all neutrophilic leukocytosis are not bacterial infection, acute bacterial infection. They can be toxin mediated like this. Next coming to the case number 5. Again, here also, what I'm saying is total count is very high. HB is low, anemia is there. Platelet count is very high. There is a flag. There is thrombocytosis. There is leukocytosis, thrombocytosis. Neutrophilia is there. Neutrophil compartment, that is 11,000. That is absolute neutrophil count is more than 10,000. So this is a case of neutrophilic leukocytosis with thrombocytosis. So what is the interpretation, Coulter interpretation? Neutrophilic leukocytosis with anemia with the thrombocytosis. We all know whenever this combination is there, what we will think mostly immediately, this is mostly we are dealing with the case of Kawasaki. It is not so. Any platelet increase is also an acute phase reactant like CRP and CBC. So whenever the platelet count is high, always try to rule out bacterial infection first. Occult bacterial infection anywhere like pneumonia can be there, UTI can be there, abscess can be there. So in this case, what happened? This is a child with a fever of 1 week duration, and the child had a neck swelling, and the child also had, there is a retropharyngeal abscess. So retropharyngeal abscess was the cause for this neutrophilia with thrombocytosis. So all neutrophilia with thrombocytosis are not equal to Kawasaki. That is the message I want to give to this August audience. Next. So this is the case of retropharyngeal abscess. Okay, next coming to the next scenario, case scenario 6. Again, here again, total count is 23,000. Definitely very high counts. What is the high? Neutrophils are the total count high. So it is a neutrophilic leukocytosis. HB is 9. So anemia is there. Platelet 8,33,000. So severe thrombocytosis is there. So what is the impression? Again, it is like the same impression like the neutrophilic leukocytosis and anemia and thrombocytosis. What happened in this case? The case scenario, fever of 6 days duration, and the rash was there with the flushed palms and soles, but this was not a scarlatiform rash. And so as the fever and rash continued beyond 5 days, ESR was very high, CRP was very high. Interpretation, we tried to rule out all the serious bacterial infection, including intra-abdominal abscess, any retroperitoneal abscess, or anything, etc., ruled out. And finally, it has turned out to be a case of Kawasaki disease. Whenever any fever within 1 week, when you get this combination, always be careful. This is the opportunity to roll out Kawasaki disease, because we have the window period up to 10 days to prevent the coronary artery aneurysm. So this is the way we should pick up. Kawasaki is a diagnosis of exclusion after ruling out the serious bacterial infection. So that we should have in mind. Okay. So far I have finished. So far all the conditions where the total count is high, neutrophils are high. So far I have finished neutrophilic leukocytosis. Now I will come to the next set of conditions. Even here, I have told, whenever neutrophilic leukocytosis is associated only there with whole pyogenic infection, if it is with eosinophilia, scarlet fever, if it is with thrombocytosis, rule out occult abscess, Kawasaki. If it is with thrombocytopenia, we can suspect leptospira. If it is associated with thrombocytopenia, it can be a severe DIC like situation where you have neutrophilia with thrombocytopenia. We should try to know how to interpret all the permutation combination, all the neutrophilia with other parameters. We should try to know what all the things going on. Okay. Now next, come to the next set of condition. Here again the total count is high, 24,000. What happened? RBC, HB is normal. What happened? Platelet is normal. So coming to whenever total count is high, I try to look out other compartment. What are the differential? Here, what happened? The differential count is 66%. There are lymphocyte. The absolute lymphocyte count is 16,000. So as I've already told, any lymphocyte count more than 8,000 indicates absolute lymphocytosis. So this is a case of absolute lymphocytosis. So whenever the total count is high, always, as I've already told, try to look out. Sorry, very sorry. Always try to look out what is going on in the what is going on in this compartment. We should try to see. Whenever the WBC is high, try to see what is happening in this compartment. Here the lymphocytes are high. It indicates finally we are dealing with the case of lymphocytic leukocytosis, or otherwise known as absolute lymphocytosis. So whenever you have lymphocytosis, always be careful. Lymphocytosis is a very dangerous one. So we should always again and again see what is happening in the RBC cell line, what is happening in the platelet cell line, because this can be a malignancy. Here in this case, everything is normal. So I am confident this is not a malignancy. So what happened in this case is a case of 3-year-old, fever of 5 days duration, clinically no focus, but child is settling day by day, fever is coming down day by day. I know for sure I am dealing with a case of simple viral fever like enteroviral infection, echoviral infection, etc. can give rise to absolute, that is lymphocytic leukocytosis is very common. So this is the situation. Whenever this type of situation is there, I will immediately look at the smear for atypical lymphocyte to rule out infectious mononucleosis like condition. If this could have been an older child with a lymphadenopathy with splenomegaly, I would have thought about infectious mononucleosis. In a smaller child, I will think that I am dealing with a case of infectious lymphocytosis. This is the terminology I want you to learn. Infectious lymphocytosis mainly occurs with respect to enteroviral, echoviral, Coxsackie viral, many viral infection can give rise to infectious lymphocytosis. When you look at the smear, all the lymphocytes will be very small, and there will be small lymphocytes. They won't be large lymphocytes. Whereas in case of infectious mononucleosis, there will be large lymphocytes. But sometimes this situation can occur only in 2 bacterial infections. One is pertussis. In pertussis, you can have the same type of Coulter reports you can have, and cat scratch disease. These are the 2 bacterial conditions you can have these conditions. Okay, right. Okay. So am I clear? So when it comes to lymphocytic leukocytosis, we should try to go like this way. Okay. So this is the way this case has turned out to be. This type of cases occur particularly many times. You come across 5 days fever, you come across lymphocytic leukocytosis. We are very happy because the other cell lines are normal. You will be very happy that are dealing with the case of viral fever. Next. Case number 7. Here again, next. So far I have finished total count high. Now we will come to total count low. What do you mean by leukopenia? Okay. So in this case, the Coulter says total count is very low, HB is normal, and platelet is normal. So whenever you come across this situation, so how do you interpret? You interpret leukopenia with other cell lines are normal. So leukopenia is the baseline. So whenever what will happen when during monsoon season in a school going child coming with a fever of 4 to 5 days duration, this type of picture is very common. You should know how do you interpret clinically. And how do you interpret clinically? So all the tropical fevers or monsoon fevers will try to give leukopenia, but only with seeing the other parameters, you know how you are dealing with. For example, whenever there is leukopenia with thrombocytopenia is there, you know you are dealing with a dengue. Whenever there is leukopenia is with low hemoglobin is there, you know you are dealing with malaria. Whenever there is leukopenia and whenever leukopenia alone is there, it can be typhoid, it can be typhus, or it can be a simple viral infection. If clinically the child is day by day is improving, you think the child is having a simple common viral infection. If day by day the child is not improving, the spleen is coming up, liver is coming up, you think that you are dealing with a case of typhus or a case of typhoid. Whereas in the case of dengue and malaria, that definitely the other RBC parameters and platelet parameters would have been affected. Definitely it will give a clue. What happened in this case, it was a simple common viral infection, because as the child's day by day, the child was improving with respect to fever, except for leukopenia, nothing was there, no spleen was there. This is a case of simple viral fever. So simple viral fever can present with the leukopenia, or simple viral can present with leukocytosis with the lymphocytosis. So we should know about this. Okay. Now, so any leukopenia is the baseline for all the tropical fevers. In the combination, it can be anything. It can be a dengue, it can be a malaria, it can be a typhoid, it can be a typhus. Let us see one by one in the next coming slides. So this is the case scenario 8. This is the patient I have seen around 1 week, 10 days back. This is the patient who, this is the CBC. What does the CBC show? Here the CBC, WBC is 5,000 to 15,000. It is borderline leukopenia. It's not leukopenia. What is the hemoglobin? It's 11.3. It is normal. What is the platelet? It is a borderline thrombocytopenia. It is around only 1 lakh. It is around 1 lakh. So this is a case of borderline thrombocytopenia with a borderline leukopenia. Hemoglobin is normal. I don't know what I am dealing with. So immediately, but when I was seeing the patient was having fever for the past 5 days. This is a 7-year-old boy from a rural background, fever 5 days, non-toxic. The patient came on 2nd day, the patient came on 4th day, the patient came on 5th day. The spleen was coming up, the child was not toxic, there was no eschar. When I did the CBC, this was the phenomenon. So whenever I come across this type of low-grade thrombocytopenia, borderline thrombocytopenia, and when I look at the smear and the platelets are normal, this is known as pseudo-thrombocytopenia. I know for sure I am dealing with a case of scrub typhus. In scrub typhus, the findings will be usually leukopenia with the pseudothrombocytopenia is the usual feature in the case of scrub typhus. What happened in this case? Immediately I started on doxycycline. I was not sure, am I dealing with a typhoid? Am I dealing with a typhus? Both will have these features. But in our area, coming from the rural background, in our area epidemiology, typhus is more common than typhoid. I immediately gave a doxycycline for 48 hours and asked them to come back, and the child was very happily coming back. And as well as the child was not toxic, the child was a response to doxycycline. So a case of scrub typhus. So whenever you have 6 days fever with a borderline platelet count, and you should suspect pseudothrombocytopenia, and along with the leukopenia, you should know you are dealing with the most probably a case of scrub typhus. In case of scrub typhus or typhoid, the platelet count won't fall below 50,000, like a dengue and malaria, where the platelet will fall below 50,000. Whereas in these cases, like typhoid and typhus, it will be around more than 50,000. It will be roughly around 1 lakh. You can see the other case also now. So this is another case. You can see there is a WBC leukopenia is there. Platelet is around 1 lakh. So this is a borderline thrombocytopenia and leukopenia. So leukopenia with thrombocytopenia. Usually, whenever there is eschar, we won't do the because we won't do the CBC in our center, because no point in asking them to spend 200 rupees, which is a clear cut. But sometimes, very rarely, we happen to do. And in this case, you can see the eschar here clearly in the back of the ear, and the CBC clearly shows that is a leukopenia with a borderline thrombocytopenia, which is a pseudo thrombocytopenia. Smear is normal. So whenever you come across this picture of leukopenia with a pseudo thrombocytopenia, it is diagnostic of scrub typhus. Okay, so am I clear with respect to typhus? Next, coming to the case scenario number 9. Here again, this is a monsoon season, fever of 4 days. Okay, here what is the thing? So WBC count is borderline leukopenia. That this count is normal. What about HB? HB in a school going age or in a pediatric age, you will never see a HB like 13, 14. So whenever you see a HB like 13, 14, you sure antenna should be high, something you are dealing with, sinister thing. And the hematocrit was 42, roughly 42. You see the platelet is less than 50,000, roughly around 39,000. This is a case of thrombocytopenia with a raised hematocrit. Even though leukopenia was not there, you know, this combination, it will occur during the monsoon season only with the case of dengue. So it is, unless otherwise proved, this is a diagnostic CBC. The Coulter reports gives the diagnosis in front of you. So this is a 7-year-old female, monsoon season, fever 4 days, fever settled, vomiting and abdominal pain. CBC interpretation finally turned out to be a dengue with warning signs. This case a case of dengue with warning signs. Okay, so this is so whenever you have a borderline leukopenia with a high hematocrit with a low platelets, you know it is for sure it is a case of dengue. So these are the other 2 CBCs which I have taken, and this you can see it's a clear cut. There is a total count is low. Leukopenia is there. You can clear cutly see hemoglobin is 15, hematocrit is 42 to 43, high hematocrit, platelet is 27, clear cut leukopenia, thrombocytopenia, raised hematocrit. There is no other diagnosis in the world other than dengue, particularly whenever you come across this situation. Okay. So this is another patient. Again, you can see this leukopenia. You can see hemoglobin is little high, 13, or hematocrit is 36, and the platelet is 50,000. Again, this is also a case of leukopenia with thrombocytopenia. Both are cases of dengue without warning signs, which happened during the dengue case scenario, dengue season. So whenever you come across this combination, leukopenia with thrombocytopenia with raised hematocrit, you should always suspect that you are dealing with a case of dengue. So far, so whenever the total count is high, how to interpret? Whenever the total count is low, how to interpret? And for example, during COVID in adult, this is the scenario you can happen. They can have particularly leukopenia with thrombocytopenia with lymphopenia, which because since COVID in pediatrics is not so common, I have not dealt with in detail. Okay. So hope now you are clear on how to interpret the scenarios with respect to the other parameters also. So always try to look at the other parameters and try to interpret. So far I have finished all the case scenarios with respect to the common case scenarios in day-to-day practice. Now I will come to the final case scenarios in hematology when the patient comes with a pallor or when the patient comes with a bleeding. Just 5 scenarios. Whenever a patient comes with anemia, there are only 3 common scenarios. Whenever a patient comes with a bleeding, 1 common scenario or 2 scenarios. Just 5 scenarios I'll try to take now. This is the child. This is the Coulter report. Any candidate can interpret. There is a plenty of flagging showing that the RBC is low. There is a flagging that RBC count is instead of 4.2 million, it is 2 million. HB is very low. So whenever the HB is so much low, when the patient is presenting with pallor, what you should do, immediately our eyes should go to MCV. What is the mean corpuscular volume? Whenever it is more than 70, you know it is normal. It is less than 70, we know for sure we are dealing with the case of microcytic anemia. So what about MCH? Usually it should be more than 30. If it is less than 30, we are dealing with a hypochromic anemia. So this is a case of microcytic hypochromic anemia with the increased platelets. So here there is anemia, WBC is normal, platelet is little high. So whenever you have a severe anemia like this, you should always see the MCV and MCH. And whenever you know microcytic hypochromic anemia, the next immediate step, what you should do is you come here, you try to look at the down, what is the RDW. Whenever the RDW is more than 15, The 11 to 14 is the thing, or it's roughly more than 15 is the cutoff. Whenever it is more than 15, it indicates increased RDW. So whenever there is anemia, microcytic hypochromic anemia, increased RDW, for a practicing pediatrician, it is, unless otherwise proved, you are dealing with a case of nutritional anemia or iron deficiency anemia. So again and again, whenever you come across the anemia, look at the MCV. If it is a microcytic anemia, look at the RDW. If it is high, you are 100% sure you are dealing with a case of, that is a case of iron deficiency anemia. What happened in this case? This is a preterm twin, one of the twin preterm baby with a recurrent breath holding spell. That was the child. You can see the child is so smiling even with the hemoglobin of 3. That is the specialty of Indian children. And this is a case of iron deficiency anemia unless otherwise proved. So here, no point in going for iron studies like ferritin, etc. It's waste of time. Just start with a good iron supplement and repeat the CBC after 1 month. Minimum 1 to 2 grams rise will be there. Otherwise, repeat again. Otherwise, there is no rise in hemoglobin. See to that whether the patient has taken the iron very correctly, and whether the child has not vomited. See that you are given the correct dose and the compliance. Then you think again, you can repeat after another 1 month. Then only you should refer to a hematologist. This is a refractory anemia, not a regular. So for all practical purposes, microcytic hypochromic anemia, increased RDW is iron deficiency anemia unless otherwise proved for a practicing pediatrician. Okay. So whenever anemia comes, this is the way we should go about. Coming to the case number 2. Again, this is also a patient of anemia. This is an adolescent with anemia. You can see the hemoglobin is 6. RBC count is only 1.5 million. What is the MCV? You can see it is 119. Whenever the MCV is very high like this, you know you are dealing with a case of macrocytic anemia. Whenever you're dealing with a macrocytic anemia, immediately again you see the RDW. RDW is high. Whenever you come across a macrocytic anemia with increased RDW, you should be very happy. Whenever you are dealing with a macrocytic anemia with a normal RDW, you should be unhappy. You should immediately refer to a hematologist. Increased RDW is good for a general pediatrician. Normal RDW, you should immediately refer to a hematologist, because this will commonly occur in the case of, this is the situation, 14-year-old girl with fatigue and jaundice, and this you can see hyperpigmented knuckle. This is a case of megaloblastic anemia. So this is for sure you are dealing with a case of megaloblastic anemia. So whenever you have a severe anemia like this, with the MCV is very high, and immediately you think about the RDW, and immediately it's a case of macrocytic or megaloblastic anemia. Here again is another example. This is one of my relative girl who was married and who came with again the fatigability and mild jaundice. You can see again the hemoglobin is 5.4. RBC is only 1.38. There is a severe anemia is there. What is the MCV? 113. What is the RDW? 27. So again, here also there is leukopenia is there, thrombocytopenia is there. Usually, whenever there is a macrocytic anemia, majority of times there will be pancytopenia also. You will be always confused. Am I dealing with a pancytopenia or aplastic anemia? So only I ask, immediately look at the RDW. Whenever there is a macrocytic anemia, RDW is high, you can be very happy. So whenever more than 2 cell lines are affected, it indicates that you are dealing with some sinister problem. But even then, if the RDW is high, it indicates you can deal with this child instead of referring to a hematologist. So RDW high is a good sign for a pediatrician, even when there is a pancytopenia. This is a case of macrocytic anemia with increased RDW, megaloblastic anemia. This you can see after a period of 4 weeks of that is initially every day B12 therapy, afterwards weekly B12 therapy. You can see the hemoglobin has come to 11.3, just even though no blood transfusion, only with B12 therapy, the hemoglobin has improved to 11.3. That is MCV has returned to normal, less than 100, and RDW is returning to normal. You can see this is the very nicely, everything is coming back to normal. So this is the way B12 deficiency can be interpreted by the Coulter reports. It can be B12 or it can be folic acid also. Okay. Next, coming to the next set of cases. So far, I've told anemia with the MCV low, anemia with MCV normal. Okay, now come to the other next scenario. Here is the Coulter report with the borderline anemia, but here the MCV is normal. So whenever you come across the MCV is normal, so normocytic normochromic anemia, you should try to always Next, cross the boundaries of MCV, MCH. You see the MCHC here. What is MCHC? There is a flag is there. The flag is that whenever the MCHC is more than 35, it indicates it is a normocytic normochromic anemia with the increased MCHC. So this is a case of 8-year-old child with a recurrent jaundice, and there was a spleen was there, and mild jaundice was there, and splenoanemia, jaundice, and splenomegaly. We all know from the undergraduate days, it's a triad of hereditary spherocytosis. So when you come across a normochromic, normocytic, normochromic anemia, immediately look at the MCHC, which can give a very good clue in 50% of the cases, not all the cases. In 50% of the cases, it can give a clue that you are dealing with a case of hereditary spherocytosis. So as I already told, when the RBC count and HB is low, try to look out the MCV, try to look out the MCH, try to look out. If both are normal, try to look out MCHC. So this is the way we should go about in day-to-day practice. So what happened in this patient? The patient's mother, we know hereditary fetal spherocytosis is a autosomal dominant condition. So in this mother also had a jaundice, mild jaundice. You can see the lemon yellow tinge also you can see. And this mother also had the anemia with MCHCI. This normocytic normochromic anemia with increased MCHC, the mother also having, suggesting that it's an autosomal dominant condition. So we are dealing with a case of hereditary spherocytosis for sure. So okay. So far the RBC part is over for when a patient presents with a pallor, how to proceed. When a patient presents with a pallor, do the CBC, look at the MCV, look at the RDW, decide accordingly. MCV is low, RDW high, iron deficiency anemia. MCV is high, RDW is high, megaloblastic anemia. MCV is normal, look at the MCHC, it can be hereditary spherocytosis. So that it is that respect to RBC. Now coming to the platelet. So any child, for example, a toddler coming with a ecchymosis and bleeding from the nose. Here I didn't have the strip. So all the other cell lines are absolutely normal. Only the platelet is low. I try to see the MPV. Like MCV, we should try to see the MPV. What is the normal MPV? Less than 10 is the normal MPV. Here it is more than 10. It indicates you are dealing with a case of large platelets. So whenever there is thrombocytopenia with the large platelets, it indicates for sure that you are dealing with a case of ITP. So whenever you have the thrombocytopenia with all the cell lines are absolutely normal, it indicates for sure you are dealing with a case of Gordon variety of idiopathic thrombocytopenic purpura. In a bleeding child, this is the way we should approach. Okay, this is another bleeding child which has come. This is a child with a fever with the bleeding. It has came with a case of fever with the bleeding. Come look at the CBC. What happens in this case? The WBC looks normal, 7,400. What about hemoglobin? Hemoglobin is 4. What about MCV? MCV is normocytic normochromic. So what about MCHC? MCHC is also normal. This is a case of normocytic normochromic anemia. So whenever you come across this type of anemia and the platelet is low, here you see the platelet count is very low. So whenever more than 2 cell lines are affected, you see to your antenna should be high, that we should think that there is a bone marrow problem. Whenever more than 2 cell lines are affected, and particularly when you have the lymphocytosis like this, lymphocyte count is 94%, you should know what we are dealing with. So in this case, what are the findings? Anemia is there, normocytic normochromic. Thrombocytopenia is there. So more than 2 cell lines are affected, it indicates a bone marrow problem. Whenever bone marrow problem is there, I know if it is going to be like megaloblastic anemia, I am happy with the macrocytic anemia, everything, but here it is not like that. Here there is a lymphocytosis. Whenever it's the so-called lymphocytosis, we think it is a lymphocytosis. It is not lymphocytosis. We should try to look out the absolute neutrophil count. What is the absolute neutrophil? For example, here the remaining 5% is there. 5 into 7,000. Here the absolute neutrophil count is hardly 500. So whenever the ANC is less than 1,500 or less than 1,000, it indicates you are dealing with a bone marrow problem. Neutrophil count is the best indicator for the bone marrow pathology. Bone marrow is functioning or not, the neutrophil is the best indicator. Here it looks like a lymphocytosis. It is not lymphocytosis. Here the neutropenia is the culprit, but it gives the remaining cells are lymphocytes. So it is a so-called lymphocytosis. This is a very commonly misinterpreted scenario. So whenever you have this is a sinister combination. Whenever you have a bicytopenia with the absolute neutropenia, it is for sure that is you are dealing with a case of acute lymphoblastic leukemia. This is the case of fever on and off, petechial spots with the 3 days, and you had hepatosplenomegaly in a sick child. It is for sure peripheral smear showing plenty of blasts. Again and again, whenever you have the lymphocytes more than 80%, try to calculate ANC. Particularly the neutropenia, that is absolute neutropenia, is very, very important for a hematologist. Absolute lymphopenia is very, very important for an immunologist. For example, in a newborn, whenever the absolute lymphocyte count is less than 1000 or 1500 or 2000, you think you are dealing with a case of severe combined immunodeficiency, refer to an immunologist. Whenever you come across in a child with the absolute neutrophil count less than 1000 or 500, refer to a hematologist. In the same way, even SLE, absolute neutrophil count will be very low, refer to an immunologist. HIV, absolute lymphocyte count will be very low, refer to a hematologist, sorry, refer to immunologist. So for example, in combined immunodeficiency, in SLE, in HIV, in a case of coronavirus, and everywhere, the absolute lymphocyte will be very low, whereas absolute neutrophil count will be very low only in case of bone marrow disease like malignancy. This is the thing. So finally, the carrier message, coming to the carrier message, primary hematological problems like anemia and thrombocytopenia, along with the smear study, the CBC itself gives the diagnosis. As I already told, microcytic anemia, so diagnosis is over, it's iron deficiency anemia. Macrocytic anemia with high RDW, it is a B12 deficiency or folate deficiency. That is isolated thrombocytopenia with all the things are normal, ITP. And as I've already told, the leukemia can be picked up the Coulter report. Whereas the dengue, CBC is a useful tool in the diagnosis. The dengue also, the Coulter itself can give the diagnosis. And whereas with respect to day-to-day infections, like for example, pneumonia, UTI, and the typhoid and everything, the CBC gives the direction. Go in this direction, go in this direction. If there is leukocytosis, you know in which direction you should go. If there is leukopenia, you know in which direction I should go. For example, if there is leukocytosis, I know I should go for X-ray, I should go for urine. If there is leukopenia, I know I should go for NS1, I should go for blood culture, I should go for scrub typhus. So this particularly with respect to day-to-day infection, the Coulter reports gives the direction and gives a very valid clue in which direction you have to go. So this is the final nutshell. With respect to hematological problem, Coulter reports are diagnostic. With respect to dengue, CBC is diagnostic and it is useful in the management and monitoring. Whereas in other infection, it is a director and how to go about with respect to further evaluation. Thank you very much. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, sir. I think it's almost 50 minutes. I think you are raining, no? So star-studded that presentation. I think you are one. I think you have saved a lot of the slides as well as Coulter reports. That's definitely it's useful for documentation. It's very important for any presentation. I think it's a great presentation. And I think you have covered almost when to do the Coulter and whom to do and time of the Coulter the presentation. What are the types of Coulters and the interpretation of CBCs and case scenarios. I think you have covered. I think it's a one is what's a normal CBC and another one is stress neutrophilia and another one is occult bacteremia and another one is scarlet fever and retropharyngeal abscess like neutrophilic leukocytosis, and what's the presentation Kawasaki disease, and in what are the conditions may produce lymphocytic leukocytosis like infectious mononucleosis.
Rajendran, unmute yourself. Rajendran.
Yeah, what are the presentation for leukopenia? And another one is in case of pallor, I think you have given all the presentation. Let's start with nutritional anemia and megaloblastic anemia. I think another one is hereditary spherocytosis you covered and platelet dysfunctions like ITP. Another one is bicytopenia with anemia with ALL in case of that's bicytopenic conditions. I think it's an excellent presentation. And so now we are going for the questions. There are a lot of questions they asked.
Dr. Pandiraman, this is an excellent presentation. Thank you very much for doing a wonderful job. And not only that, you have made every practitioner to think about ordering the CBC is not at all matters, but only thing how to interpret it. The way you spoke about the RDW and other things which we usually neglect. We used to see the hemoglobin, platelet count, and WBC count, and just brush it aside. But now I think you have made us to think to spend some time on that, especially all the components of a Holter. Thank you very much. And of course, I thank the coordinator also for that, and Raju also for doing this. And next, the same module will be taken in the different zones. The next module will be spoken by Dr. Janani Shankar from the North Zone. And from the West Zone, it is going to be Shashi Ranjani, hematologist attached to Masonic Hospital, Coimbatore. And of course, for the South Zone, it is going to be by Shanmugha Sundaram, from former professor of Madurai Medical College. Thank you. Any questions? Raj, you can take over.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
And,
Yes,
Dr.
sir.
Aswath,
Plenty of questions are there.
Aswath,
I'll take one by one, or you can ask, sir.
why is there eosinophilia and scarlet fever, Dr. Aswath?
Any toxin mediated illness are known to produce eosinophilia. Even in hard skins, you can have eosinophilia. Even this thing, because apart from the allergic reaction to the toxin, our body is producing mainly it is a reaction to the erythrogenic toxin. That is, so you'll have eosinophilia in scarlet fever.
And another, Dr. Sadish from Vellore, he has told that 20 to 30% of children with Kawasaki disease can have underlying infections like UTI and pneumonia. And it is a clinical diagnosis is commanding.
Yeah, definitely. After ruling out because sometimes you maybe think it is a urinary tract infection, but only when the culture proven, because they can have sterile pyuria and can have a atypical Kawasaki, like atypical Kawasaki with sterile pyuria. Sometimes you may think that is you are dealing with a case of urinary tract infection, but I don't know how common both are present in the same individuals. Only Dr. Satish can answer. But as such, usually UTI is misdiagnosed instead of Kawasaki. It is misdiagnosed as a UTI because sterile pyuria can be there. But usually it will be a few pus cells instead of a plenty of pus cells. It will be few pus cells. When you do the culture, it will be negative, and indirectly the other parameters will be the neutrophil, leukocytosis, thrombocytosis. Everything will be there. You think because of the few pus cells you are dealing with a UTI, and you will manage UTI like a UTI, and finally you will end up like a Kawasaki. This is a case of initially also it's an atypical Kawasaki, and finally also Kawasaki. But I don't know whether both the thing can coexist. Dr. Satish only can answer this question.
Yeah, Paliraman sir. As you said correctly, the infections, Kawasaki is a super antigen disease. So any antigen causing infection, underlying infection, you can top of that, you can have a Kawasaki disease. We have so many examples. Blood culture has grown non-fermenting gram-negative bacilli. Child admitted in the ward, fever not settling, and child develops all the symptoms of Kawasaki disease. So underlying infection can be there in Kawasaki disease.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next, Dr. Viswanathan, you mentioned 1/3 there would be X-ray changes of pneumonia, but clinically normal. Would you like to treat it?
Sir, it is a case of clinically the child will be actually ill-looking to sick-looking, and definitely it is a case of pneumonia. We have to treat like a pneumonia. This is a very common. Occult pneumonia is very common. Every day we come across, every week we come across. Clinically, we will not be able to give the finding. CBC will give the neutrophil leukocytosis. You will have to take X-ray. You will be surprised to see you have a lobar pneumonia. Again, when you put the stent, there won't be there any findings, any decreased air thing or decreased bronchial breath. So nothing will be there. This is a classical occult pneumonia is very common in infant and particularly young toddlers, and this is a very common scenario and in day-to-day practice, and everyone should be aware of this occult pneumonia phenomenon. Then they won't miss taking an X-ray.
Thank you, sir. Next one is Dr. Jaisri. Next is pseudo-thrombocytopenia.
Pseudo-thrombocytopenia, actually, we can say, basically, for example, when the clotted blood, if you do naturally because of the clotted blood, they can have a clumps and naturally platelet count can be low. Number one. Number two, EDTA can have antibodies can be there, and finally, because of the EDTA tube itself can have a clump or platelet clumping, and you can have pseudo-thrombocytopenia. Number two. Number three, there is because of unknown phenomena, I don't know what is the real phenomena in scrub typhus. There is known to have a platelet clumping and pseudo-thrombocytopenia. So when you look at the smear, there will be adequate platelet clumps will be there. But when you look at the Coulter counter, the counts will be roughly around plus or minus 10,000, 20,000, about around 1 lakh. So this is the thing. These are pseudo-thrombocytopenia in scrub typhus.
Next, Dr.
And sometimes for example, platelet satellism can be there. For example, neutrophils will be surrounded by platelets, and here also there can be a pseudothrombocytopenia. These are the few situations you can have a pseudothrombocytopenia. If your clinical condition doesn't go hand in hand with your thrombocytopenia, again look at the smear. So whenever you are in doubt, look at the smear and clear out doubt whether it's a real thrombocytopenia or a pseudothrombocytopenia. Sometimes it happens for the surgeon, because many times incidentally when you go for the surgery, they will be having a thrombocytopenia will be there and the surgeon will be refusing. But when you look at the smear, everything will be normal. So pseudothrombocytopenia we should have in mind.
Next, Dr. Viswanathan, when you say raised hematocrit,
raised hematocrit varies according to the age. For example, in infancy, it can be even 36 is definitely a high hematocrit. So in the same way, in the older age, so you should know the baseline. Anything more than around 3% more than the baseline, you should suspect a high hematocrit. Usually in the infancy, around 36 to 38 itself a high hematocrit. In the older children, more than 40 is the high hematocrit.
So what happens to RDW in hereditary spherocytosis?
RDW, usually it will be normal. It usually in the case of normal but it can be plus or minus. Sometimes it can be abnormal also. But RDW doesn't play a role in the case of normocytic normothrombic anemia.
Another one is valuable question. What is the cost?
So RDW is very valuable only when you are having low MCV or high MCV.
And what's the cost of pooled Sysmax? Dr. Viswanathan is asking.
Now it has come down, sir. Now when I bought, it was around 4.5 lakhs. Now it has come down to 3.5 lakhs. 3 part has come down to 3 to 3.5 lakhs is the cost. Now different models have come. It is now all the good counters comes around 3 to 3.5 lakhs.
Yeah. Next, Dr. Vinod, how is RDW in leukemia? Whether macrocytosis occurs in leukemia? How to differentiate from megaloblastic anemia?
Usually in any case of aplastic anemia or leukemia, the RDW will be normal. But the case which I have shown, the RDW was high. So only this question came. But whenever you see the other things, when you correlate with the other things, and no need to look out because for example, in this patient, there was lymphocytosis was very predominant. So which was in front of your eyes, it was giving a clue that you are dealing with a case of bone marrow problem. So like that situation, you have to, little exceptions are there, nuances are there, we have to take into account. So, but as a general rule, whenever the MCV is high, RDW is normal, we should think about sinister things, aplastic anemia, Diamond-Blackfan syndrome, everything will have a normal RDW, whereas megaloblastic anemia will have a high RDW. This is the usual clue.
So another one is Dr. Viswanathan. In typhoid, how often you get eosinopenia? How specific?
Eosinopenia is a very, very good marker for particularly if you have a very good counter, 5-part counter, and if you know absolute eosinopenia is 0, absolute eosinophil count is 0. Whenever there is a combination of leukopenia less than 5,000 with the absolute eosinopenia, your predictive value of typhoid is more than, actually the predictive value is sensitivity and specificity is more than 70%. It is more than 70% the sensitivity specificity of, and there is a study also long back in IGPP it has come. It is a very good indicator that you are dealing with a case of typhoid, particularly when the absolute eosinophil count is 0. But the problem is in our population, there are plenty of helminthic infestations. Already when the eosinophils are high, 15, 14, everything, and the eosinophil coming down to 5 or 6 or 4, there will be a problem. We will not be able to come to a conclusion. But when the eosinophil is 0, definitely we can think.
So next, Saranya, how to interpret CBC when the child is on steroids?
Sir, hello?
How to interpret? How to interpret CBC when the child is on steroids?
Steroids are notorious to produce neutrophilic leukocytosis and eosinopenia. These are the two things changes whenever the child is on steroids. So whenever you have a child is on steroids, so you should not take alone the neutrophilic leukocytosis. We should take with a pinch of salt. And eosinopenia is also can be there. Both are feature of steroid itself. But when the clinical situation warrants and you have to take into account all these phenomena when you are dealing with a particular nephrotic syndrome on steroids, am I dealing with the infection or not? So you should have these things we should take into account.
Another Dr. Muthurama Subramaniam, CBC in newborn with birth asphyxia or any stress?
CBC in birth asphyxia, I am not sure how far it will be helpful. Only in the case of sepsis, the CBC is useful. I don't know how far it will be useful in the birth asphyxia. Anything.
Dr. Aswath, another one is Coulter in JIA.
Coulter in JAA is like a Coulter in Kawasaki. For example, when you are having a 10 days fever, and when, like I've already told, total count high, and there is the platelets are very high. For example, 6 lakhs, 8 lakhs high, and the total count is 25,000. Neutrophils are 80%, and the anemia is very borderline, 8 to 9. So whenever there is neutrophilic leukocytosis with thrombocytosis, with microcytic or normocytic normochromic anemia, in a fever of more than 10 days duration, with a typical quotidian fever, after ruling out everything, is a diagnosis of exclusion. We can think about JIA in a clinical setting. So it indirectly, it will be presenting like a Kawasaki or a occult abscess. It will be like a presentation, like it indicates like a systemic inflammation. That is, systemic inflammation means all the things will be high except RBC. Everything will be high. Platelets will be high, neutrophils will be high, and total count will be high. ESR will be high, CRP will be high.
What is Vinod? What is 3-part and 5-part Coulter counter?
Usually the 3 parts counter is the common thing. The Coulter counter like Sysmex, what I am using is they will show lymphocyte in one hand, which is the graph I have told. Left hand is the lymphocyte and right hand side is the neutrophil. In the middle is the mixed. The mixed cells are nothing but the monocytes, basophils, and eosinophils. These are the mixed cells. So the lymphocytes you can accurately from the graph, you can from the counter itself use the report, and neutrophils, the counter itself use the count. Whereas eosinophils and all, only whenever there is mid column is high, you should go for the smear and finally find it out what is the reason for the mid column peak. The mid column peak can be due to monocytosis, can be due to eosinophilia.
So Dr. Abdul Jalil, any comments on IT ratio?
IT ratio, that is immature count to total count. That is mainly by the smear you will be doing, not by the counter. But the latest counters which are available, 7-part counter, everything are there, giving IT ratios also. But these are very expensive, more than 15 lakhs, 20 lakhs. But they are of not much use for particularly a regular day-to-day general pediatrician. They are mainly useful for the hematologist, because they give the flag, mainly the blast, atypical lymphocytes, and immature forms, and everything will be flagged in them, particularly in case of 5-part or in 7 parts. In 3 parts, you won't get those things.
Another one is Dr. Dyagarajan. CBC on day 1, how far it important in dengue session when the child presents with febrile seizures?
So CBC on day 1, definitely you have to take with a pinch of salt. If the count is, for example, as I've already told, it can be a stress phenomena. After ruling out infection, you know it is a stress phenomena. Or sometimes, for example, if the hemoglobin, etc., you can take it as a baseline for the further follow. For example, on day 1 of dengue, if the hemoglobin is for your scene, what is 11 or 10, as time goes on, for example, at 4th day, if the hemoglobin is 13, or thing, you know, definitely there is a rise in hematocrit. You can use it as a baseline. For incidentally, if you have done the CBC, you can use it as a baseline. So serial CBCs are more useful, particularly whenever when you come across PUOs, or in case of dengue or any cases, serial CBCs are very, very useful.
And Dr. Muhammad Nasir, and the role of MPV in dengue fever.
MPV fever, particularly in a recovering phase, when you see the MPV platelets or MPV platelets with MPV is high, definitely you know there are the platelets are coming up, and there actually in dengue the large platelets say that is giant platelets, or the marrow is producing more young platelets. That is one indication the child is recovering. Second thing, nowadays the counter they have come out with the immature platelet fraction. That is a very good indicator for whenever you are dealing with a dengue case, whether the child is going for recovery of the platelet count or not. So immature platelet fraction is different from large platelets or giant platelets, MPV.
Another one is last question, Dr. Swabha. If hemoglobin is normal with slightly low MCH and MCV and normal RDW, how to proceed?
If the hemoglobin is for example, if the hemoglobin is low or mildly, that is borderline low, with the MCV is little borderline low, and if you are particularly when you are practicing in a Maharashtra or a Karnataka or a Punjab, you should always see to that whether there is a family history of thalassemia. Whenever there is thalassemia, there will be microcytic anemia with a normal RDW. You are dealing with a case of thalassemia trait. So you should be very careful in that cases. So whenever there is no clue in case of MCV, whenever you come across a normocytic anemia, you should always go for reticulocyte count. When in the normocytic anemia, reticulocyte count will show whether you are dealing with a decreased production or an increased destruction. Particularly hemolytic anemias, they are a big chunk of anemias known as hemolytic anemias. They come under normocytic, normochromic anemias. Because of lack of time, I have not taken the hemolytic anemias as such. They come under normocytic and normochromic anemias with reticulocyte count low or high. That is the classification we should go about.
Thank you, thank you, Dr. Ismail sir. Comments. Unmute.
Thank you, Dr. Palniraman. I think you have taken up a very nice way all the questions. Hope all the delegates would have been happy by the way you have answered them. And we look forward for the other programs to do well. We request all the delegates to attend. The same module will be repeated in the coming forthcoming weeks by different speakers. That is within the month of April. We are going to have another 3 modules on the same. The same module will be repeated for 3 times. Thank you.
Thank you.
1 minute.
Yeah.
Can I ask Dr. Janani madam to add any inputs for the thing, because she is a well expert in hematologist from KKCTH. She can add whatever the wrong things I have told. Anything she can.
No, Palniraman, it was a great talk. Now I'm becoming nervous and how I'm going to do justice next week. They've done a wonderful job. I think most of the questions.
Sir, next topic will be dealt by madam.
Yeah, I know that's what we've been discussing, Palniraman and me, and I think I should change my slides and approach a little differently because the participants may be the same or there will be an overlap. So that was a very good design. And I think the chat box, most of the answers, both of us had the same answers. So I'm glad that I'm as knowledgeable as you are. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much, madam, for the
Dr.
contribution.
Ashwath, any comments, please? Ashwath.
Ashwath.
Yeah, Anna.
சொல்லுங்க அண்ணா.
Your comments, Ashwath. Your comments, Ashwath.
இல்ல மண்டே பழக்கிற சூட்டுல அண்ணனோட பேச்சு ஐஸ் வச்சுட்டீங்க எல்லாருக்கும். It was very useful and very I think pearls for the pediatricians in the periphery was given by a pearl from a peripheral pediatrician. ஆனா சொல்வதை செய்வோம் செய்வதை சொல்லுவோம்ங்கிற மாதிரி, because you have been doing whatever you are preaching, I don't think you have to rehearse for any of these meetings. You are going to